First, Melusine was sitting and talking with her. Anne, what is this? Anne had specially brought her a kumquat. The dreamy lady, she truly cares for Melusine. This kumquat is absolutely delicious. Since you don't care for other dishes, I thought perhaps you would enjoy some fruit, and carefully explain the right way to eat it. Wait, hold on a moment. The hard part is the peel. You have to remove the peel before you eat it. Melusine tasted it with delight. Thank you, Anne, and eagerly awaited Melusine's verdict. Well, she praised the kumquat's flavor profusely. It's delicious. Melusine was as happy as a child. This is so good, and learned more about her preferences. I'm glad you like it. So you can eat fruit? She couldn't help but wonder. Isn't it sour to you? Melusine was lost in a feeling of bliss. I like it a lot. It's very tasty. It feels unusual to eat, but I don't mind. Is that so? Then please eat a lot. But does the dreamy lady really like sour things that much? Snow had covered the pine needles in the garden outside. The sound of elegant shoes echoed through the palace. Someone is making a scene again. Good heavens, who is arguing so loudly in the middle of the hallway? How utterly shameless. Estelle acted high and mighty towards her. Even the way you eat is just like an animal. Melusine tried to control her anger. Estelle said contemptuously. Look at the way you eat. Are you any different from a beast? She had suddenly come to see Melusine. Who knows what Estelle brought with her? Where is the thing I asked for? A servant quickly brought it out. She subtly dismissed the maid. All of you leave us. I have something to discuss privately with Lady Melusine. Estelle didn't want Anne to interfere. You too. And gently explained, yes, but I am under orders to always be by the lady's side. But Melusine didn't want to put Anne in a difficult position. So she told Anne, don't worry, I'll be fine. I'll just go talk with Lady Estelle for a moment and be right back. Anne couldn't stop her in time, but she remained silent, not saying a word. The two of them sat in a pavilion by the lake. Melusine got straight to the point. So, what did you want to talk to me about? Estelle clutched the box in her hands. It's nothing too serious, it's just something I wanted to give you. She was curious about the item inside. What is this? She spoke cryptically. You'll definitely be needing this. Melusine didn't understand what was happening. I need this? Estelle urged her. Go on, if you're curious, open it and see. She stared intently at Melusine. She couldn't hide her astonished expression. Melusine knew nothing about it. The color is so strange, what is it? Estelle revealed bluntly. It's contraceptive tea. She froze completely. Contraceptive? Estelle was extremely smug. If you drink this, she explained its effect, you won't be able to have children. The Archduke and I are going to hold our wedding soon. It could be this year, or at the latest, before next spring. Estelle made her position clear. If an unwanted child were to appear during that time, it would be very troublesome, wouldn't it? It took Melusine a moment to finally speak. It seems nothing gets past you. You hate me, don't you? Estelle was stunned by the question. What? Melusine exposed her true colors. You don't want me to have Kieran's child. As Estelle forced a fake smile, her face twitched. That's not it. The thought of the man I'm about to marry having a child with a wild thing like you, with a woman who's no different than an animal, it's utterly disgusting. It was as if Estelle was threatening Melusine that if she gave birth to an illegitimate child with noble blood, she would only find herself in trouble. Take my advice and drink it. She tried to persuade Melusine, saying, I only want what's best for you, but I can't force you. She was lying. How could Melusine not see it? Her words said she wanted what was best for me, but I knew she didn't mean it. Every time we met, she would spew such vicious words. Is it because she loves Kieran? At first I tried to tell myself it was fine, but my heart ached every time I saw her. Melusine absolutely would not give up on her feelings for Kieran. Now, she wanted to be the only one in Kieran's eyes. Thank you, Lady Estelle, but I don't need it. Hesno couldn't believe his ears. Are you serious, Your Grace? Of course, Kieran wasn't joking. He would proceed with the plan in 1 month. Why not? Isn't this what you wanted, Marquis? The man was still stunned. That's right. If that was the case, Hesno wanted to insert himself further into the plan. While you attack the new palace, I will handle the area around the capital. But Kieran wouldn't let him have his way. He already had arrangements. That won't be necessary. I'll send Count Luceran to handle it, and you will accompany me to deal with the Emperor. How about it? He had no choice but to agree. Since that is your wish, I will follow your command. He was a bit flustered. Ah, what about the wedding? Kieran finalized the time for next spring. We will hold it next spring. Yes! Hesno was overjoyed. Excellent. Then I shall go inform Estelle of the wedding date. He then tried to push his luck. Actually, I think she would be happier if you told her yourself. Kieran couldn't care less about that. Handle it yourself. Hesno didn't know what expression to make and hurriedly left. If there is nothing else, I will take my leave. Kieran paid him no mind, which infuriated Hesno, but there was nothing he could do. He only does as he pleases. For now, I can only yield to him. There's just 1 more month left. Once I've successfully won his favor, it will only be a matter of time before my daughter becomes the Empress. Kieran sat alone in the room, holding a gem and examining it. The day to execute the plan was just 1 month away. This would be the chance to strike a fatal blow to Pernhawk. That evening, Melusine sat hugging her knees in a dark room, staring at the vial and murmuring, "Contraceptive tea." She recalled the morning's conversation. "I don't need it. I already refused, but she still forced me to take it." She thought she didn't need it for their intimacy. Just being by Kieran's side was enough. Singing him lullabies, swimming with him in the small cove, just that alone was enough to make my heart flutter in a way I can't describe. Kieran suddenly entered the room, calling out, "Melusine." Melusine's face lit up when she saw him. "Kieran!" He held a tangerine in his hand. "So you've started eating things other than fish now?" She eagerly recommended it, even though it was her first time trying one. "It's really delicious. Let me peel one for you. It's sour at first, but then it gets very sweet." Kieran's face was radiant when he was with Melusine. He gently took her wrist. "Is that so?" The tangerine fell onto the bed as they shared a sweet kiss. Melusine was so shy that both her cheeks flushed red. Kieran confirmed what she said without even eating it. His voice was as sweet as honey, sour at first, and then truly sweet. As Kieran kissed her passionately, Melusine's breath hitched. Kieran. She was still so conflicted. Every time he held her, she hesitated about returning to Boxius. "I have to have my Kieran Siren's heir soon. I don't want to leave you, so if I can. I don't want to have a child just yet." "Melusine, you want to do that?" Kieran was completely startled. "Why?" His eyes filled with disbelief as Kieran held the vial of tea. "What is this?" he couldn't help but ask. "Melusine, do you have any idea what this is?" She didn't know what to say until Melusine finally managed to utter, "I know, it's contraceptive tea." Kieran was furious. "You know what this is for, don't you?" Before she could finish her thought, he pressed on. "Then why do you have it?" leaving Melusine flustered. Even Kieran himself was starting to have doubts. Doesn't she want to have a child? Since when did she start hiding things from me? His older brother's voice echoed in Kieran's mind. "Don't tell me you actually think you're going to have a family. You will never be happy. So remember that, in the end, no one will want to be with you." Just then, Melusine's voice pulled Kieran back to reality. "Kieran, Lady Estelle gave that to me, but I never even touched it." He remained silent, and Kieran took a deep breath. "Melusine, don't you trust her?" Melusine countered. "Then can I trust you right now?" Kieran's feelings for her ran deep. "I don't want to think about anything else. Right now, I just wish everything could stay like this forever." Anne, sitting by the shore, called out softly, "Lady Mermaid, you need to eat something. All you had yesterday was an orange." Melusine shook her head and replied, "But I'm not hungry and I feel a bit queasy." Anne thought for a moment, then suddenly said, "Lady Mermaid." Melusine hummed a questioning sound. Anne's voice was hesitant. "Could it be that you're pregnant? You haven't been able to eat well recently, and you throw up whatever you do eat. My mother was just like that when she was pregnant with my little brother." Saying this, Anne suddenly stopped short. As if she realized she'd said too much, she quickly exclaimed, "Oh my gosh, what am I even saying? Please pay me no mind." Melusine sighed and told Anne, "I need to be alone." After Anne left, she curled up in a corner of the lake, gently rubbing her belly as she thought. If what Anne said was true, a joyful melody suddenly began to play in Melusine's heart. Her heart started pounding. She was astonished. "Isn't this the sign my sisters used to talk about? The sign of pregnancy?" Her face flushed, unable to hide her excitement. "I'm really having a baby." Just then, the sound of footsteps approached from behind her, and a familiar voice called out, "Melusine." Seeing it was him, Melusine whispered, "Kieran," as he sat down beside her and tucked a flower into her hair. She asked, "What is this?" He replied, "A hibiscus. It's said to be the flower of the merfolk." Melusine touched her hair and repeated softly, "A hibiscus?" Kieran looked at her affectionately, pondered for a moment, and then smiled. Melusine's expression was so innocent and pure. He stroked her head. Melusine said eagerly, "Kieran, just a moment ago." But before she could finish, he cut her off. "Melusine, I heard you haven't been eating well lately?" Her eyes darted away. After a moment of fluster, she quickly made up an excuse. "It's just that my stomach has been a little upset." Kieran told her, "Just tell me whatever you feel like eating." Melusine fell silent for a moment, thinking, would Kieran be happy if he knew I was pregnant? She decided to tell him, "Kieran, I..." But then she hesitated. Melusine remembered what the Marchioness Hesno said. "The Grand Duke and I are getting married soon. But if an unwanted child were to show up around then, it would be a huge problem, wouldn't it?" Estelle's words made it impossible for her to say anything more. She thought to herself, "Once I'm pregnant, I'll have to return to the sea, whether Kieran likes it or not." Seeing Melusine's hesitant expression, Kieran asked, "What is it?" She looked down and replied, It's nothing." She told herself, if that's the case, it's best that Kieran doesn't know. Scene change in Melusine's private room. While brushing her hair, Aine said, "Lady Mermaid, about what I told you yesterday regarding my younger sibling." Seeing Melusine sitting there silently, Anne, a bit surprised, called out, "Lady Mermaid." Startled, she turned back. "Oh, I'm sorry, what about your sibling?" But Anne sighed and said, "Never mind, let's talk about something else. My family isn't that interesting to talk about," Melusine replied cheerfully. "No, please tell me. I love hearing you talk about your family." Melusine suddenly took Anne's hand and said, "Jen and Lynn, I want to meet all of them." But seeing her so emotional, Anne asked, "Lady Mermaid, what's wrong?" Melusine hesitated for a moment before answering. "Ain, do you remember that word you taught me? The one that's as beautiful as the word family? Ain, guest, friends, right?" Melusine nodded. "Yeah, that's the one, friends." She looked at Anne sincerely and said with a friendly smile, "Anne, you're my friend, the most precious friend I have here." Upon hearing her words, Anne was so moved her eyes welled up with tears. She squeezed Melusine's hand and replied, "Lady Mermaid, I will always be on your side. Even though there's not much I can do, I will always be with you. But Lady Estelle will be moving in soon. But you must absolutely never bow your head to her. And stressed, you remember that, okay?" Melusine replied confidently, "Okay, I got it." As she said that, she suddenly slipped from her chair and collapsed, and Anne rushed to catch her, yelling, "Lady Mermaid, Lady Mermaid!" The logs in the fireplace crackled. Melusine lay with her head on Kieran's lap, as he sat by her side, gently stroking her soft hair. Melusine's eyes fluttered open, and seeing him, she called out, "Kieran." He asked gently, "Melusine, how are you feeling?" She smiled and answered, "I'm better now." "Today," Melusine beamed, "being able to see you makes me so happy." Kieran suddenly leaned down, looked at her, and said gently, "Melusine, I'll be very busy for a while." She lifted her head to ask, "So when will you come back?" He gently stroked her hair and replied, "Probably not until next year, when everything is taken care of." He muttered something under his breath but quickly sealed his lips. Surprised, Melusine asked, "What's wrong?" Kieran immediately replied, "It's nothing." He grasped her arm, pulled her into his arms, and then reassured her, "It's nothing." He held her and said, "You've gotten thinner." He reminded her, "You have to eat well while I'm gone. I've already had them plant more orange trees in the garden." Saying that, Kieran kissed her cheek and asked, "You remember?" She answered quietly, I'll try." Melusine thought to herself, "Maybe it's almost time. When Kieran leaves the mansion, that will be my only chance to go back to the sea." Scene changed to a room on the 7th basement level. A young man was being viciously tortured, and after a short while he collapsed, groaning, "Ugh, ugh." The door suddenly opened, and Kieran stepped inside. The moment the man saw him, he cried out, "Ah, you're Grand Duke von Penhart!" He struggled and begged, "Please, your grace, have mercy. Please spare my life. I'll confess everything about my identity and the mission I was given." Kieran asked in a stern voice, "You're a distant relative of Marquis Hesno, and a bastard of the family? You've served under me for 3 years, and for that entire time, you've been a spy for the Marquis." Hearing his words, the man said, stunned, "How did you—" He cut him off. "Did you think I kept you around because I was ignorant?" he yelled. "Then why haven't you dealt with me until now?" Kieran replied, "I was waiting for the right time to use you." With that, he gestured with his chin for his subordinate to release the man. The soldier immediately untied him. The spy flinched, unable to believe his eyes, and looked at Kieran with a pleading gaze. "Please spare my life. I'll do whatever you ask." Kieran then asked, "Have you reported what you heard during the strategy meeting yet?" The startled spy replied, "Not yet, sir." When Kieran signaled Ian, he immediately took out a scroll and said, "Your Grace, here it is." He handed the document to the spy and ordered, "Report the contents of this to Marquis Hestern, and if you dare disobey my command." Before he could even finish his sentence, the man immediately replied, "Rest assured, Your Grace, I will absolutely complete the mission." Their business concluded, Kieran and Ian quickly left, the large door shutting tightly behind them. Ian said, "That man will certainly be killed right after he reports to the Marquis." Kieran agreed yes, because the Marquis will soon realize that the plan the spy delivered is completely useless, and he will surely realize that what's in the spy's hands is a warning from me. He added, now that he's been exposed, on the day of the operation, he won't dare to make a move, so things will be quiet for a little while. Suddenly, Kieran turned and called Ian. He immediately replied, "Yes, Your Grace." Kieran instructed, "I own an island in the southeast. When this is all over, I'm going to build a vacation villa there," he asked. "You're planning on building a vacation villa?" Kieran hummed in agreement, his thoughts drifting to Melusine. If her frail condition is because she misses the sea so much, then I'll let her stay on that island for a few months. Kieran still remembered the blissful look on Melusine's face when she saw the ocean. Perhaps that would help cheer her up a little. Meanwhile, back at the mansion, Melusine was standing by the window, gazing at her own sorrowful reflection. The wedding dress designer had arrived with the gown. He presented his idea to Estelle. I think we can add some glitter embroidery. The dress was already embroidered with gold thread and adorned with gemstones along the neckline and skirt. He asked politely, "Is this to your liking, my lady?" She was pleased. "I love it. Please embroider it in purple to match my eyes." The designer exclaimed, "What a wonderful choice. My lady, there isn't much time, but since the wedding is next spring, I will do my absolute best." Estelle smiled and said, "I'm counting on you." Just then, she glanced over at Kieran and saw him sitting quietly as if none of this concerned him. Estelle called out, "Your Grace." She approached him and said in a saccharine voice, "I heard they just dug a new pond in the rear garden. Could you take me to see it? That is, if you're free today?" Kieran immediately cuts Lady Estelle von Hesno off. "I don't care how much you spend on the wedding or if you cover your dress in gold. But don't you dare waste my time." Hearing this, Estelle felt like she'd been doused in cold water. She ordered the designers, "All of you, get out." Estelle's hand trembled as she gripped her dress, mustering all her courage to speak. "Your Highness, do you still intend to keep that girl by your side? She told me she came from Boxius." Kieran replied with a single curt word. "So?" Estelle replied, "A legend is just a legend. She's still a woman of unknown origin, and I'm just afraid she will harm you." Hearing this, Kieran looked up at her and asked sternly, "Were you the one who told His Majesty about Boxius, Lady Hesno?" He shot up from his seat, closing in on her, and said in a cold voice, "If you truly want to be the Grand Duchess, then instead of trying to win my favor, you'd be better off not displeasing me. Remember that." This frightened Estelle so much that she collapsed back into her chair. After saying his piece, he turned and left, leaving Estelle alone, gritting her teeth in utter fury. "Melusine!" Estelle stood before her large portrait in the grand hall, thinking to herself, "I am the proud daughter of Marquis Hesno. I have never been humiliated to this degree. Whatever feelings the Grand Duke has for that woman, it's no longer my concern. It doesn't matter anymore, she'll just be cast aside after the wedding. That's right, as long as the ceremony goes smoothly, I will." Just then, a knock echoed at the door. "Knock, knock." A maid went to open it, and Estelle asked sharply, "What is it?" She replied, "Yes, someone is here to see you, my lady." Estelle turned around, and as soon as she saw Melusine, she exclaimed in surprise, "Lady Melusine, I was just thinking about you. What brings you here?" She hesitantly replied, "I have a favor to ask of you." Estelle scoffed. "Me? I truly can't stand the sight of you," Estelle said as she walked toward Melusine. "Do you know the biggest difference between a noblewoman like myself and a lowly commoner like you? It's the power to possess and take anything I desire. If you insist on remaining the Grand Duke's mistress, I will make your life a living hell at all costs." However, hearing this, Melusine lowered her head and replied, "Then you won't have to do that, because Lady Estelle, I want to leave this place." Estelle exclaimed in astonishment, "What?" Melusine looked her in the eyes and spoke, "So please help me leave the estate and get far away from Kieran." Outside, the snow fell without stopping, as Melusine stood in her room looking out the window. Humming a cheerful tune, she rubbed her belly, thinking to herself, "It seems my little mermaid is growing up strong and healthy, huh? Whenever I sing the lullaby of the sea, I can feel the baby's heart thumping away. I wonder what it will be like when she's born." Melusine was lost in thought, unaware of the soft footsteps approaching her. Just then, Kieran embraced her from behind, calling out sweetly, "Melusine." She looked at him in surprise and exclaimed, "Kieran!" He asked, "Why are you still awake?" Melusine replied, "I can't sleep." She suddenly asked, "Kieran, are you leaving soon?" He replied, "Yes, I'll be leaving tomorrow at noon." His hand gently squeezed her shoulder, and Melusine thought to herself, "Just one more night, this will be the last night that I get to be with this man. No one understands Kieran like I do," she thought, raising her hand to caress his face. To others, Kieran's gaze may be as cold as ice, but whenever he looks at me, his eyes seem to burn with passion, and only I knew that when we were close, our breaths grew hot enough to scorch me. Not wanting anyone else to know, Melusine pressed her face close to his, whispering, "Kieran, hold me, I want you," she told herself. "Just this one last time, I want to engrave Kieran's image deep inside my body." He looked at her and said softly, "You're so frail like this, I'm not in the mood," Melusine pleaded. "But I want to." Kieran was a little surprised as Melusine kissed his cheek, her voice coquettish. "Kieran, please." He remained firm, saying, "No." Like a little kitten, she kept rubbing against him. "Please, Kieran." He looked at Melusine for a moment, then pulled her into a tight embrace, responding with a sweet kiss. After kissing for a while, he pushed her slowly toward the large bed, and they both tumbled onto it. Melusine completely surrendered to his strength. She thought to herself, if back then, if Kieran hadn't broken the glass tank and taken me out, I don't know what would have become of me. I probably would have never met Siren Hit, nor would I have ever had the chance to carry this child in my womb. But for some reason, I have a feeling that even if we hadn't met that day, I still would have ended up with Kieran eventually. He softly called her name, Melusine. Her innocent face turned to him as she replied, Kieran. She hugged his shoulders tightly. She thought to herself, you were the first one to teach me how happy it feels to call someone's name and have them call yours in return. Melusine suddenly looked him straight in the eye and said, Kieran, I love you. He paused for a moment, held her tightly in his arms and said, I know. She smiled with contentment, letting out a soft, Suddenly, a tear appeared at the corner of Melusine's eye. Just being able to love you, Kieran, should have been enough, but perhaps I've lived in the human world for too long. I want to be loved, even just a little is fine. I want him to return my feelings so that even if in the end, everything turns into sea foam, I still hope Kieran will remember tonight forever until I erase this memory. The next day, a person in a heavy cloak came to see Estelle, who smiled and asked, So you've come, Lady Melusine? Are you ready to depart? Melusine replied, I am. She handed her a vial and said, Take this, it's hair dye. After the Grand Duke leaves, apply it to your hair. Melusine hesitated and asked, Do I have to use it? Estelle explained, You're the only one in the entire empire with pink hair. If you don't change your hair color, you won't be able to take a single step out of the mansion, Melusine replied. I understand, she added. Emperor Edward has agreed to send a carriage for you. The Grand Duke won't be able to search a royal carriage as he pleases, so you'll be able to leave the estate smoothly. Get ready. Estelle crossed her arms, watching her intently. It's almost time to go, Melusine thought. I have to be ready. Kieran said he would be leaving today. Now we really won't see each other again. She stood high above, looking down below, the flags of the Grand Duke's army fluttering in the wind. Melusine felt a pang of regret. He's leaving. She clenched her trembling hands. I wish I could talk to him one last time. Suddenly, a voice called from her side, Melusine. She looked over and saw Kieran approaching. He asked in a stern voice, What are you doing here? She felt a surge of joy in her heart. Look, my love, your father must have come to say goodbye to us. And Melusine took his hand, replying gently, Because I wanted to see you, Kieran. Did you come here to see me? He looked at her intently and replied, Yes. Kieran gently lifted Melusine's chin and placed a kiss on her lips. Melusine paused for a second before returning his passionate kiss. She thought to herself, It's so strange. We've kissed so many times before, but this one makes my heart ache. Melusine lowered her head and said softly, Wherever you go, please stay safe and healthy, don't get hurt, and get enough sleep. Hearing this, Kieran smiled and replied, That's what I should be saying to you. He reached out to touch her cheek, his voice gentle, I will return. Then he immediately turned to leave, and Melusine called out after Kieran, I love you. She suppressed the pain in her heart, even though she was about to leave him forever. Melusine said with a radiant smile, I love you. That feeling will never change. Kieran turned back to kiss her one more time before leaving. Night fell, and Estelle stood by the window looking out, thinking, A few days have passed since His Majesty left for the battlefield, and King Edward's carriage will arrive tomorrow. Everything is going according to plan. She suddenly remembered Melusine's plea. Please help me leave this castle and get away from Kieran. Estelle sighed, lost in thought. I don't know what that woman is thinking, but I won't have to see her face anymore. Suddenly, a frantic scream came from outside the door. A maid rushed in. My lady, you must hear what this knight has to say. Estelle looked at the young man standing next to the maid. Completely surprised, she exclaimed, You're supposed to be on the battlefield with my father. Why are you here? The knight from House Hesno appeared to be gravely injured, and the maid quickly supported him. Estelle asked, What happened at Status Castle? And so, he recounted the events that had just taken place at the Marquis's castle. A knight reported to Hesno, Sir, His Majesty is approaching Status Castle. He exclaimed, He's late. Then Heston drew his sword, raised it, and gave the order. Everyone, to your trained positions. As soon as his troops arrive, we will join forces and advance on Status Castle, as one. Kieran rode at the vanguard, signaling his men to execute the plan. The Marquis, suspecting nothing, told his soldiers, His Majesty will personally lead you into battle. But suddenly, an arrow sank into the lead soldier's shoulder, and a piercing scream rang out. Ah! Hesno panicked. Are we being ambushed? He looked toward the direction the arrow came from, feeling extremely doubtful. But that's the Duke's banner? Kieran dismounted and called out loudly, Marquis Hesno! Kieran walked up to him, suddenly pointing the tip of his sword at the Marquis's neck and ordering, Lay down your weapons. Yes, behind him, the archers were ready. Hesno knew he had been set up and asked, How long have you known? Was it because of my spy? Is that why you removed me from this mission? Kieran sneered, Ha! Did you really believe I wanted to seize the throne? Hesno wondered. Then what does this mean? Behind the Marquis, two soldiers approached. They immediately restrained him. Hesno cried out, Why would you? Kieran cut him off. Why would I need you to take the throne? The Marquis exclaimed, But we were about to become family. Hearing this, he scoffed in reply, Family? I don't have a family, never have, and never want one. So what? Hesno said, trembling. That means From the very beginning, Lord Kieran declared, I am of House Pernhok, and this empire belongs to the Pernhok family. And a lowly man like you, Marquis Hesno, has no right to even dream of it. The Marquis trembled uncontrollably, stuttering, I. Heisenberg's piercing scream rang out and then fell silent, and after hearing the knight recount everything, Estelle exclaimed, so all of this was part of his plan. Meanwhile, with Melusine, Anne saw her looking sad and comforted her. Don't worry, Lady Mermaid. I know it will be a while before His Majesty returns this time, but even so, I'll do my best to make sure you don't feel lonely, okay? Melusine said with a smile. Hey, Anne. Anne replied cheerfully, yes. Suddenly she stood up and hugged Anne, which took her completely by surprise. Lady Mermaid, is something wrong? Melusine said softly. Thank you, Anne. Thank you so much. My gratitude for you is as vast as the ocean. Anne felt confused, Lady Mermaid, and began to hear a melodious singing voice. Echoing in her ears, the gentle, captivating lyrics made Anne's eyelids suddenly feel heavy. She thought to herself, what's happening? I suddenly feel so tired. I can't keep my eyes open. And quickly fell asleep, and Melusine helped her into bed, carefully pulling the blanket over her and stroking her hair. She whispered softly, if I knew I had to say goodbye like this, I would have tried to do more for her. Is this what it's like to say farewell? I finally understand why my sisters always hurried back to Boxall's, even after spending a night with a human man, because I'm the one left with the pain of being the only one who remembers all the time we spent together. Just then, there was a knock on the door, and as Melusine turned, she saw Estelle. She said hurriedly, Lady Melusine, it's time to go. Why don't you come to my room first? Melusine replied without suspicion. All right. She stepped into the room, oblivious to Estelle grinding her teeth and glaring at her with fiery eyes. The door closed, and Estelle said to Melusine, I'll explain the plan to you. She handed Melusine a scroll and instructed, you will pose as my handmaiden. If you show the guards this signature from King Edward, the maid with you will explain that you are on your way to deliver a message from the king. Once you're outside the gates, you can do whatever you want. Melusine took the scroll and said, all right, thank you. Estelle suddenly asked, let me ask one last thing. Can you tell me why you want to leave His Highness? Melusine turned her head, avoiding Estelle's scrutinizing gaze, and replied, I'm sorry, I can't tell you that. I see, Estelle said. Very well, I suppose it doesn't matter anymore. Go on, you should get out of here. Melusine left quickly, looking back at the castle one last time before getting into the carriage. Estelle stood still, watching her leave with a cold gaze. It was only after hearing the knight from House Hesno recount everything that she finally understood. This was all an act staged by His Highness. Estelle burst out laughing, ha 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 ha. The handmaiden and the knight who saw this were completely stunned. She exclaimed, I finally understand. That explains his attitude lately. He never had any intention of going through with it. Among those things, Kieran once said, I don't care how much money you put into this wedding, or whether you sprinkle gold dust on your wedding dress. She thought to herself, whether it's the rebellion or our wedding. The maid suddenly said, the carriage for the mermaid will arrive tomorrow at noon. Estelle guessed that Edward must be complicit in this too. The maid asked, what should we do, my lady? Estelle replied with a smile, we will proceed as planned. After all, I have no reason not to help Lady Melusine. His Highness also needs to know what loss is, right? Estelle said coldly. That way, I'll feel a little better. About all of this, 2 carriages rattled along a desolate dirt road. Melusine looked out the window, wondering, this is strange. I thought we were heading toward the village, so why are we going so deep into the forest? Suddenly, the maid sitting beside her spoke. You know, Lady Melusine, startling her. She continued, I don't really have anything against you, but Lady Estelle promised me a handsome reward if I do one thing for her, she said as she pulled out a dagger, and Melusine was horrified to see it. She asked in a panic, what are you talking about? That woman lunged at her with the dagger, screaming, I have to kill you. The maid gripped her wrist tightly, and Melusine struggled, crying out, let go. Suddenly, the carriage began to shake violently. The maid slammed her head against the side of the carriage, screaming in pain. The dagger fell from her hand. Outside, the coachman was terrified as the horses suddenly neighed wildly. He immediately abandoned the carriage and ran, and the carriage abruptly veered towards a cliff's edge. The wheels scraped as they slid, sending dirt and rocks crumbling down below. Melusine was terrified. She grabbed the window frame to climb out. I have to get out of here. The maid slipped and grabbed her dress tightly, screaming, no! Her hand flailed in front of Melusine, and just as the carriage overturned and fell below, it was then that it started to rain. The rain poured down, and below, the carriage lay shattered to pieces. Melusine had managed to jump out of the carriage. Right before it plunged down, she slowly got up, when a sharp pain shot through her leg, making Melusine cry out, I must have been injured when I fell, she thought. I can't move. Estelle never intended to help me. She realized it now. Humans can't be trusted. They always betray you in the end. No. Melusine sat up, looked towards Chaitin Castle, and quickly dismissed the thought. No, even though things were difficult then and now, Chaitin also brought me many happy moments. Many of the maids and guards in the castle were good people, and most importantly, I met Kieran. Melusine thought, it's not too late. If I truly want to leave cleanly, I have to erase everyone's memories. Tears suddenly welled up in her eyes as she hummed a sweet melody. My song will reach your hearts, and from those hearts, it will spread to the sea. So please don't wait for me, don't wait for me. Scene changed to the royal palace. A subordinate reported to Edward. His Highness has signaled victory. He says he will bring the traitor to you himself. Edward said nonchalantly, is that so? But my uncle has won yet again, hasn't he? Before I took the throne, I could never understand why. No matter how many victories my uncle won for the empire, Father would always look at him with such a heavy expression, and I was afraid of the scornful way he looked at me. Kieran entered the hall and said in a low voice, Your Majesty. Edward replied with a smile. Ah, there you are, uncle. Where in the world is the traitor? He is kneeling in the hall, sir. I have brought him here for you to deal with personally. The emperor waved his hand and said, There's no need, just handle him for me. He was silent for a moment before replying, I cannot, Your Majesty. Edward frowned slightly and asked, What do you mean? Do you want me to take up the sword myself? Kieran looked up and answered sternly, Yes, that is the right thing to do. After a moment of shock, Edward asked him, Why? Why didn't you just ally with the Marquis and actually rebel against me? Be honest, uncle. He shot to his feet, asserting loudly, You must have hesitated, even just for a moment, weighing your options until the very end. Edward slowly walked toward Kieran, rambling on. Of course not. See? That's why I should have killed you from the start. He suddenly looked Edward straight in the eye and said, If I had ever desired the throne, then you would have never ascended to it. Hearing this, the emperor froze. What? Kieran drew his sword and said coldly, Your Majesty. He stood before Edward and slashed through the air, the tip of his sword grazing right past the emperor's face. Then, Kieran offered him the sword and said in a grave voice, If you want to ensure that no one ever dares to aim for your throne again, then you must ensure it yourself. Edward took the sword, stammering as he asked, Why don't you want the throne? Kieran answered firmly, Because that throne has never been what I wanted. Perhaps it would be more accurate to say that I no longer have any desire for it. With that, he quickly turned on his heel and left, leaving Edward alone. Standing there, frozen to the spot, he ran a hand through his hair and laughed hollowly. Ha ha ha, I can never win. I've always hated that steadfastness of his. I was hoping to get a rise out of him with that mermaid, but I didn't even get to mention her. Suddenly, Edward exclaimed, Wait, a mermaid? Am I a child? Why would I even think of a mermaid? Maybe I really am going crazy. The scene changes to a small house at the edge of the forest, where Melusine is lying in bed. Her eyes were shut tight, her face unable to hide its sorrowful expression, when she suddenly opened them. Nearby, someone exclaimed softly, Hey, she moved. Are you okay? Another person gestured, whispering, Shh, not so loud. A little boy and a little girl stood by the bed, seeing Melusine's brilliant blue eyes. The little girl immediately exclaimed, Oh my gosh, she looks just like an angel. Melusine was a bit surprised, wondering to herself, Who are these children? Hearing this, the little boy scoffed, There's no such thing as angels, you dummy. Melusine noticed he had a scar on his forehead and asked, Are you Den? The two children were completely shocked and cried out in unison. How did you know that? The little girl said. I've never even seen you in our village before. Or maybe you work at the Duke's castle? Just then, the door suddenly opened, and a woman walked in. She reminded them sternly, You two, be quiet, she said to the children. Go outside and help John fix the shed. Den and his sister immediately obeyed. The woman looked over at Melusine with a kind smile. I'm sorry, did those two wake you up? How are you feeling? Melusine was a little stunned. That face. She must be Anne's mother. The woman explained, My children found you unconscious by the cliff and brought you here. We've treated your wounds, so if you're in pain anywhere, just let us know. You're a mother now. You have to take care of yourself. Melusine looked a bit flustered, then lowered her head and said, That's a secret. The woman was slightly surprised, but she smiled and replied, Of course. Yes, please stay here until you're fully recovered. Don't worry about a thing, Melusine said, touched. Yes, thank you so much. After finishing his work, Kieran immediately returned to the castle. Everyone cheered loudly. The Duke has returned! Ian, holding a cloak, said cheerfully, Congratulations on your victory, Your Grace. How are you feeling, Your Grace? He immediately asked. What do you mean? He replied, For the past 2 months, you've barely gotten any proper sleep. Kieran smiled and said, Well, things will be different today. Suddenly, he turned back to Ian and asked, What about her? Ian was startled. Pardon me? He asked. Where is Melusine? The maids looked pale and confused. Melusine, Your Grace? Forgive me, but who are you referring to? Kieran immediately ran to Melusine's room. He pushed the door open and stepped inside, only to find a completely empty room. Ian said, Your Grace, ever since you began ruling this castle, this room has always been empty. Kieran froze at his words. How can that be? One day, Melusine was in a small house at the foot of a mountain, with Gen and her children, a small and truly happy family. The two children were helping their mother hang the laundry, and as Melusine Shin watched this happy scene, she broke into a cheerful smile, though her heart still held a touch of sorrow. In the evening, she was teaching Jin to read. The little girl asked, You know the name of this flower too? Melusine Shin hesitated and replied, This is a hyacinth. Jin looked incredibly surprised and exclaimed, You're just like my older sister. She immediately asked, Your older sister? Jin replied, That's right, and she knows the names of all the flowers just like you do. Melusine said enthusiastically, That sounds wonderful. Jin is so lucky to have such an amazing sister. This is a secret, but I once had a friend like that too. She's the one who taught me the names of all these flowers. Jin couldn't hide her excitement. Wow, the little girl cheered. You know it would be so amazing if... What if your friend and Anne and all of us could be together? Jin said, My sister Anne might get a little break from her work at the castle soon. Melusine asked, Really? Jin explained, The Duke just came back recently, so I guess he won, and because of that... Suddenly, the girl noticed Melusine trembling slightly. Jin asked, What's wrong? She hesitated and replied, It's nothing. Melusine placed a pouch of pearls on the table, thinking to herself, I hope they'll see this as a thank you gift. She looked at Gen and her two children sleeping soundly in bed. Maybe I should say goodbye before I leave, but then Melusine changed her mind. No, I'm going to erase their memories of me anyway. She reached out, about to cast the spell to erase all their memories of her. But then she suddenly stopped. Melusine left quietly and went to the seashore. She thought to herself, Anne's family doesn't know I'm a mermaid, so it'll probably be fine if I don't erase their memories. She took off her cloak, reassuring herself, Yeah, it will all be fine. And I was able to find my siren hit and give him a precious child. I couldn't ask for anything more. As the sun began to rise, Melusine took off her clothes, left them on the shore, and walked into the sea. As she walked, she thought, I guess this is the last time I'll stand on solid ground as a human. She looked back one last time. Farewell, my beloved siren heat. Scene change. Kieran quickly sent his men to search, and they discovered the carriage had fallen into a ravine. Ian said, The coachman and the maid both work for Lady Estelle. A letter with the Emperor's seal was found inside. They must have had an accident while on an errand. Kieran wondered. And the knife. Why would a maid like her have a knife on her? Ian guessed. It was probably for self-defense. There were no traces of blood on it, and their testimonies matched. It's clear there were only two people in that carriage. From the beginning. Ian suddenly looked at him and asked, Who is she? This woman you're looking for? This Melusine? Kieran was choked with pain. Behind his cold expression was a relentless torment. So this is what they call the mermaid's curse? Melusine's image was everywhere in his mind. Kieran silently called out, Melusine. My Melusine Shin, where in this world have you disappeared to? Just then, a soldier suddenly arrived with a package to hand over. The knight immediately presented it. Your Highness, I think you should see what this man brought. He turned to look. It was a bag of pearls. Meanwhile at Jin's house, her mother was furious. She shouted loudly, You should have discussed this with me first. Why would you sell what that guest left behind on your own? The young girl explained, But Mom, your cough is much worse than you say. She immediately replied, The neighbors already gave me some herbs. I'll be fine. Jin didn't think so, she asserted. I already asked. Those herbs aren't enough to cure you. I bet this is how she wanted us to use it anyway. Jin said in a sad voice, Mom, she told me she was going to leave. Her mother gently patted the little girl's shoulder to comfort her. She must have her reasons. If we just wait a little longer, maybe we'll hear from her. Suddenly, there was a loud banging on the door. Jin exclaimed, Who is it? The woman went to open the door. She asked gently, How may I help you, sir? Kieran dismounted from his horse. He asked in a deep voice, Are you the owner of this house? Seeing the tall man before them, the mother and daughter cried out, Your Highness! Kieran got straight to the point. A jeweler told us that you sold him some pearls. Jin's mother admitted, Yes, that's right. He asked again, Where did you get those pearls? She didn't dare to hide anything. Actually, a young woman stayed with us for a while before, and she left them for us when she departed. Kieran asked, Did she have pink hair? Jin said immediately, No, she had red hair. Ian remarked, Red hair? Your Highness, I don't think she's the one you're looking for. He signaled for him to be quiet and continued to ask Jin, What color were her eyes? The little girl replied, Blue like the sea. He asked further, So where did this woman go? Jin's mother bowed her head and said, I'm truly sorry, Your Highness, but we don't know. she disappeared in the middle of the night. Kieran gritted his teeth. He immediately turned and said, "Let's go." Jin's mother thought to herself, they aren't chasing her for something wrong, are they? On the contrary, from what I can see, his eyes looked so worried. Suddenly she recalled the first day she met Melusine. "You're a mother now, you have to know how to take care of yourself." But she said it was a secret. She wanted her business kept private, but maybe I should still tell him. Jin's mother suddenly called out, "Your Highness, there's one more thing I haven't told you." The young woman left those pearls because she was pregnant. Kieran returned to the castle and sat on the bed, his hand touching the sheet. He suddenly clenched his fist as he remembered the moment with Melusine. Her stomach wasn't very big, but it was definitely showing a little. Other than oranges, she had trouble eating anything. I should have realized just by seeing that. Melusine was pregnant and the baby was mine. Her strange behavior the day before I left, she had called my name and said, "Kieran, I love you." But I didn't realize it then. Kieran was tormented with guilt. I should never have ignored her like that. I shouldn't have bound her as if she were my possession, and I shouldn't have given her a name in the first place. He gave her a name from the very beginning, only for her to turn into sea foam like in a fairy tale. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. Ian entered. "Your Highness, Lady Lady Estelle, is here to see you." Kieran stood and asked immediately, "How did she get here?" Ian replied, "After Marquis Hesnel was executed, His Majesty took pity on his family and his close servants. They were all sentenced to hard labor in the Duchy of Baton, but it seems she sold all her jewelry to buy her freedom. She insisted on seeing you, saying that there is something she must tell you, even though I refused her many times." Kieran thought for a moment, then said, "Let her in." Estelle immediately fell to her knees before him, her entire body trembling as she spoke. "I am so very grateful to you, Your Highness. I have shamelessly come to see you, because I have come here to ask one thing of you. If you can, please find it in your heart to forgive the woman who was once your fiancée." Tears began to stream down her face. Her voice choked as she begged, "Please kill me." Kieran, looking somewhat weary, said, "Let me ask you something. One of your handmaidens was found at the bottom of the cliffs, near Chitan, with a royal carriage beside her. Do you recall why you sent that maid to the royal palace?" She looked up at him, her face a mask of fearful confusion. "My maid was on an errand?" Then she quickly bowed her head in fear, stammering into Kieran's silence. "I apologize, Your Highness. I don't remember anything about that at all." "So?" he asked coldly, making Estelle flinch in fear. "Is that it? You want me to kill you?" "If you truly wanted to die, there are countless ways to do it without coming all the way to Chitan." She stammered in reply, "Yes, but I wanted to see you in person," before he quickly cut her off. "Did you think I would pity you if you came before me and begged for it?" His words hitting a nerve, Estelle flushed red and bit her lip in shame. His voice rang out, so cold that it made her shiver without the cold. "You are a traitor to the throne. Be grateful you haven't been executed for this." Then he turned and walked away, leaving the wretched Estelle kneeling there. Seeing him go, Estelle quickly called after him with a worried expression, "Your Highness!" He stopped and glanced back at the hateful woman, saying, "You really are a coward, unable to even face death on your own terms. You've come to the wrong person for help. I would sooner die than help you." Hearing that, her eyes filled with shocked horror, Estelle bit down hard on her chapped lips, her body trembling uncontrollably. Ian, standing behind her, spoke up gravely, suggesting, "Miss Estelle, you should leave now." Estelle suddenly burst into crazed laughter. "Have you heard, Your Highness? There's a rumor that you're searching for a young woman. They even say you fell for her at first sight, as if someone like you, who only knows how to destroy everything, could ever love someone." He froze for a moment at her words, listening on. She cackled, her eyes filled with madness, as tears silently fell while she spoke. Estelle collapsed to the ground, continuing helplessly, "I'm so pathetic for ever having loved you." Kieran turned to look back at her coldly, saying, "Stop. What you felt for me was not love. You wanted me for my status and my title, that is greed." Then he suddenly lifted his head and let out a bitter laugh. But Kieran recalled the image of the woman he had longed for all this time. He thought, "I guess I'm no different." Then he turned and left without another word, leaving her sitting dazed in the room. "Don't die, live. Ian, even if it feels impossible, you must do everything in your power to survive. I sentence you to live." It was late at night, the bright moon shining into the room, when Ian spoke up, "I have let Miss Esther leave." He then asked, "Should I have someone follow her to make sure she actually leaves?" Kieran, seated in a chair in the middle of the room, replied, "That won't be necessary." Then he added, "You may go." Ian bowed deeply and replied, "Yes, Your Highness." He sat silently in the chair, his mind wandering. Kieran recalled his earlier conversation with Estelle, when she had said, "I'm sorry, Your Highness." "I don't remember anything about it," he thought. Esther also shows no signs of remembering Melusine, just like everyone else in the castle. Melusine must have been in that carriage. She sought help from the very person she knew would hurt her. just so she could abandon me. The image of Melusine slowly formed in Kieran's mind. Her face was becoming a blur in his mind. He struggled to remember her. Kieran continued to think, the sin that Esther committed, even if she no longer remembers it, will be the shackles that bind her and weigh her down for the rest of her life. As for the sin I committed, you aren't truly important to me, but those words will choke me forever. Kieran remembered a night when he held her close and cruelly said, "Of course I don't like you." Now, he thought of it as an endless punishment. The moonlight shimmered on the lake's surface as Kieran sat there, covering his face in despair, and said regretfully, "What right do I have to think I love you?" Then he thought, "If I can never find you again, this suffocating feeling will torment me until the day I die." He shuddered at the thought that he might forever be robbed of the chance to atone for what he had done to her. He lifted his face, which was stained with tears, but deep within his eyes burned an immense determination. Kieran recalled his time on the battlefield. For the first time, I was afraid of death. Even though it was a pointless battle I couldn't possibly lose, the reason I was so afraid of losing my life was because, she had told him, "Even if you have to go, please don't get hurt, don't get injured, and make sure you sleep well, okay?" That's what she told me. For the first time, I wanted to live. When I survived, I returned to the image of you waiting for me. When he came home, she was still standing there silently, waiting. Seeing her, his steps grew faster and faster, rushing towards her. I wanted to see your eyes again, so real and endlessly clear. Where am I supposed to go to find it now? I've lost my reason to live, and the woman who led me to my death. The next day came quickly, and Kieran summoned the butler. He opened the door and entered, saying respectfully, "You summoned me, Your Grace?" His back was turned to the butler as he ordered him to summon Ian, then ran a hand through his hair and muttered wearily, "Soon, we will set sail." In the Duke's study, a confused Ian spoke up, "Do we really have to go that far, Your Grace?" Kieran didn't answer, asking instead, "How are the preparations coming along?" He replied, "I've made preparations so we can depart as early as tomorrow." But then, he slammed his hand on the desk in frustration, urging, "This is too reckless, Your Grace. Taking only a minimal crew on board is practically a suicide mission." In contrast to Ian's anxiety, Kieran said calmly, "I know, which is why you will stay here." He was horrified to hear that. "Huh? What are you talking about?" Ian practically shouted. "If I, the vice commander, don't go, then who will?" He simply asked calmly, "Don't you already know?" He then instructed, "The one person I can trust and entrust the position of Grand Duke to is the Count of Melusine, which is you." Then Kieran took a scroll from a box and presented it to him, declaring, "This is a succession document regarding a portion of the territory I possess and the rights to rule it. If I should die without an heir, then most of the Titan territory and assets will revert to the royal family." Ian quickly took the scroll, glancing between him and its contents in utter astonishment. Kieran continued, "However, territories earned through great merit in war, I can pass down to whomever I wish." Hearing this, Ian stood frozen on the spot, the scroll still clutched tightly in his hand. Seeing him just standing there blinking, Kieran asked impatiently, "What, is it too little?" Hearing that, Ian jumped, replying in horror, "How can you say such things, Your Grace?" He thought with concern. Right now, it seems like he's putting his affairs in order. As they were talking, someone interrupted. "Your Grace," it was the butler, holding a letter and rushing in to report breathlessly, "A message has arrived from His Majesty the Emperor." Kieran took the letter, falling silent as he read it. The hand holding the letter suddenly trembled, and he ordered in a cold voice, "Prepare a horse immediately." Seeing this, a worried Ian spoke up from beside him. "Your Grace, please tell me what is going on. I will prepare with you." He wondered what on earth was in that letter to cause such a reaction. The letter was from Edward, Kieran's nephew. It read, "Uncle, it seems I have found the legend you've been so desperately searching for. Let's meet at the Sotat Palace." He quickly threw on a cloak and rushed off. Meanwhile, Edward was sitting leisurely inside the palace, awaiting Kieran's arrival. By the time Kieran galloped there, the entire royal palace was shrouded in night. As he stepped inside, a horrible stench immediately assaulted his senses, making him frown as he thought, "It stinks." This smell was unmistakably. Across from him, Edward sat casually on a platform. In front of him was a coffin. Seeing that Kieran had arrived sooner than expected, Edward laughed mockingly. "Oh, I didn't think you would get here so quickly." Kieran got straight to the point. "Where is it?" Edward crossed his arms, stood up, and replied cheekily, "Huh? Who are you talking about?" Kieran was in no mood for his games. His face darkened as he yelled, "Spit it out now!" Edward casually walked down. Then, as if it just dawned on him, he answered, "The girl you've been so desperately searching for?" Upon hearing the name Melusine, he had a violent reaction. "You remember Melusine?" Then, as if a thought struck him, Kieran's expression changed in an instant. With a terrified gaze, he glanced at the coffin and slowly approached it, as if he'd lost his soul. Edward then cruelly moved in close and whispered in his ear, "It seems you've misunderstood something. I said I thought I found her, not that she was still alive." Hearing that, he froze in terror as if his entire world had crumbled. Then Edward said with a vicious laugh, "The thing you thought I found is no longer alive." Kieran dropped to his knees beside the coffin, frantically prying the lid open. His body trembled violently, but he still tried to reassure himself. No. He screamed like a madman, startling even Edward, who was standing beside him. "It can't be!" The lid came off, and a foul stench filled the room. He quickly covered his face, horrified, and screamed, "This is a corpse that's been decomposing for a long time! How could you tell just by looking and touching it?" Hearing that, he froze. His hands were stained with blood from the corpse in the coffin. As if he'd been saved, he breathed a sigh of relief, thinking, the bone structure and appearance are different from Melusine's. Then he turned and shot a cold glare at the culprit. "This body isn't Melusine's," Kieran practically roared. The veins on his face were visible. "Your Majesty, do you find this amusing?" Hearing that, Edward's expression turned serious, no longer hiding his intentions, and he broke into a grin, a crazed one, as if he could bite someone at any moment, and replied, "Fine." He leaned in, his eyes wide, and said, "There is truly nothing more wonderful than this." Hearing that, Kieran lunged forward and grabbed Edward's collar, yanking him close. "What is this nonsense? I wanted to see it for myself, the sight of you breaking down." Hearing this, Kieran's whole body trembled violently as he clenched his jaw to restrain himself. Edward, with no regard for his own life, provoked him further. "What? Are you angry? Do you want to kill me, just like you did to my father?" Hearing his brother mentioned, he froze. He quickly broke free from his grasp, stumbling back and coughing violently, and said, "I always thought you weren't the type to feel despair." His face was filled with terror and exhaustion, yet he remained defiant. "I hope. You were just as distraught when you killed my father. No matter what, you'll just have to put up with this nephew of yours. My father was always afraid of you. He constantly pushed me, wanting me to become just like you. In the past, while Edward's father was still alive, he was obsessed with Kieran's talent and forced his own son to be just like him." "Stop it!" he choked out. "How could you possibly know what it feels like to always live in someone else's shadow?" Edward screamed, panting heavily, out of breath. But the man before him, Kieran, remained completely unfazed. That only made Edward even more furious. Hating Kieran even more, thinking through gritted teeth, "You're still." As Kieran calmly thought, so he's been haunted by the ghosts of the past. Kieran restrained himself from lashing out and began to explain, "On that day, I was not the one who murdered the previous emperor." Hearing this, he screamed maniacally, "And you expect me to believe that now?" However, Kieran calmly replied that it was for his majesty to judge, as the previous emperor had been gravely ill for a long time. "After he died, you were worried about your position being left all alone? And that's why you always wanted to kill your own brother." After saying that, he stared silently at Edward for a long time. To Edward's surprise, he called out, "Edward, stop burying yourself in the past. It's useless because I know you better than anyone." After a tense conversation, Kieran abruptly left the royal palace, and as he stepped into the grand courtyard, he suddenly stopped, glanced behind him, and said, "Come on out now." From behind a large pillar, Ian, who had been secretly following Kieran, sheepishly crept out after being discovered. He called out, "Count Luceran?" Ian asked sheepishly. "You knew I was there?" Kieran sighed in resignation. "With you lurking behind me like that, how could I not know?" He stood formally before him, changing the subject in Kieran's silence. "Is the carriage ready? Shall we return to the estate?" Kieran suddenly asked in a serious tone. "Why have you never once asked me? The reason you're going to such lengths?" Ian was taken aback by his question, then simply smiled brightly and replied, "I have never once doubted you, my lord, and this is the first time I have ever seen you look so desperate. Although I still have no memory of the woman named Melusine, this is the first time I have seen you look so desperate, truly the very first time. Therefore, I believe it is my duty as your vassal to follow you." Kieran stood frozen as he heard Ian share his thoughts, then coldly turned away as if to hide his true feelings. Leaving him with only one command, "We depart immediately." A new day began. A boat drifted upon the sea, carrying countless hopes, as Kieran spoke. "At daybreak, if we are on schedule, we will set sail for Boxius." 3 years later, in a small town, the townspeople were buzzing with gossip. Someone said, "The Grand Duke has gone half mad." And another chimed in, "I heard he ordered all the previously planted orange trees to be torn out, even though they had only just been planted. Moreover, he's always saying he's going to set sail. The destination is said to be the Mermaid Island, isn't it? Isn't that just something from a legend? Or a myth? There's no such thing in this world." But an old woman, sitting like a beggar in a street corner, heard all of this and suddenly noticed something. Kieran and Ian stood before her in cloaks, as the surrounding crowd continued to gossip. "Is he looking for a woman named Melissa?" Ian explained to Kieran, "This is the old woman I was talking about. She spoke in fear, Huh? Who are you? He lowered his dark-circled eyes, fatigue evident on his face, and asked, I heard you've been singing a certain song? The woman was confused. What? What song? Kieran gave a slight smile, pulling back his hood as he continued. It's called Dien Melusine, that song. Pardon? He recalled a past conversation. Kid, you said you heard it, right? The old woman created it, right? The boy answered nervously, Yes, sir. He then made a suggestion. Little one, could you sing a song for me just once? The little boy was a bit shy, but quickly agreed, and then his singing voice rang out, carrying a melody like the author's own heartfelt words. I don't know why I feel so sad. A story passed down from long ago still lingers in my tear-filled heart. The most beautiful girl in the world sat enchantingly on the rocky island of Bursars. With a sparkling gold necklace, she combed her shimmering pink hair. It was something heard with the heart, not the ears. A strange and enchanting melody. The master of the great ship was swept into an elusive sorrow, looking only toward the island of Bursars. The joyful waves swallowed the man and his ship. The little boy glanced at the person beside him as he sang. It was a beautiful face. That was the story Melusine's song hummed about, and the old woman finally reacted, muttering the name under her breath, Melusine. Hearing that, Kieran froze and then quickly rushed over to ask frantically, Yes, it's Melusine. You know her? Where is that girl now? Where do I have to go if I want to find her? His sudden eagerness seemed to frighten her as she remembered something, waving her hands wildly. Don't come near me, all of you just get lost. To the astonishment and slight disappointment of Kieran and Ian, her screams continued to echo. The old woman kept repeating, I don't know anything. Hearing this, he bit his lip in desperation. Helplessness washed over Kieran, and he pleaded earnestly, I'm begging you, please just tell me, where do I have to go to meet that girl? Seeing him plead so earnestly, Ian, standing beside him, called out softly with pity, Your Highness. Hearing that, she paused slightly, silently studying the man before her, then slowly approached him, smiling as she said in a soft voice, Are you a siren? She gave a less than friendly smile and replied, I'll tell you one way. A siren can reach my mermaid in one way. In the middle of the vast, immense sea, enduring a terrible storm, Kieran stood calmly on the ship's bow. The words of the mermaid woman still echoed in his ears. That is to offer your life to Bursars. The blood of a siren must flow into the deep sea. And then, Kieran had coldly faced her and asked, What must I do after that? The old woman had only replied with a wicked smile. No one knows what happens after. To this day, no human who has tried this method has ever succeeded. Kieran held the sharp sword in his hand, his eyes filled with determination. He silently called out Melusine, then looked toward the vast sea in the distance, his heart unwavering. If the waves are all the sea has, then you are all that I have now. So then, he then slowly raised the sword, pointed it at himself, and with resolute determination, plunged it straight into his heart. He coughed up a mouthful of fresh red blood. Even though I am nothing compared to you, please come back and be by my side forever. Please let me hear your bursa. And then he slowly threw himself into the sea. On a clear morning, with the sea sparkling beautifully, a child's happy voice rang out, Mommy! Melusine heard it and turned toward the sound. A little mermaid girl with pink hair was swimming playfully with a pod of dolphins, saying cheerfully, I have something to tell you. Melusine, in her beautiful and captivating mermaid form with flowing pink hair, sat on a rock and replied, What is it, my love? And Lao surfaced from the water, smiling adorably as she said, Mommy, can I go play on the beach with Inia? Melusine and the other mermaids looked at the little girl happily, and she replied, All right, of course, just don't be back too late, okay? Lao waved goodbye and replied sweetly, Okay, I'm off then. Bye-bye. The red-haired mermaid laughed with delight. She's so adorable, the pink-haired mermaid added. Seeing her makes me want to hurry up and go ashore too. Hearing that, Melusine gave a mischievous smile and said, Then you ladies had better pay close attention to the explanation about the mating season. Hearing that, the two mermaids gave a forced smile, and she continued, Now, where was I? Once they were ashore, the red-haired and pink-haired mermaids put their heads together, and the red-haired one said, But there's one thing I'm curious about. Melusine smiled and replied, What is it? I'll tell you anything I know. The red-haired one asked, Do we really have to erase all of their memories? Hearing that, she froze, remembering her moments with little Kieran. Siren, even if I have to leave later, I don't want to be forgotten by him. She sat silently on the rock, struggling to speak. As she was speaking, Lao burst out of the water in a hurry, calling urgently, Mom, Mom. A surprised Melusine asked, Why are you back so soon? The little girl thrashed her tail, pointing towards the island and saying urgently, Something washed ashore on the island. Over there, I think it's a shark. She looked at her child fondly and said lovingly, But you told me you've never seen a shark before? The little girl quickly explained, But it's as huge as a shark, and it's all black, but it's really weird. Sharks are supposed to be scary and ugly, but that thing isn't ugly at all. It's the opposite. I'm curious what color its eyes will be when it opens them. I want to hear its voice, so I just dared to watch from afar. Melusine walked forward on her human legs. She grabbed a green cloak and walked step by step toward the person who had washed ashore, thinking. Her heart started to race when she got a clear look at the person's face. A storm of emotions crossed her face. The person lying motionless on the sand was Kieran. Melusine called out in shock, "Kieran? How?" She moved closer, kneeling beside him, her trembling hands gently touching him as she thought, "Is it really you? Is it really Kieran? Kieran, what are you doing here?" His face was deathly pale, showing no signs of life, which made her panic as she hurriedly pressed her ear against his chest. When she heard his heartbeat, she let out a sigh of relief, whispering to herself, "He's still alive?" Then she called out, shaking him relentlessly, "Kieran! He must have been in some kind of battle and drifted here. If he's still alive." Her song began to rise, echoing across the blue sky, carried on the ocean currents. "Even if we were to meet again, you wouldn't recognize me. Just as no wave ever stops in one place, just as no wind ever skims just one spot, the place your heart has passed through, only my song will remain. So please, don't cry anymore, don't be in pain anymore." Kieran's breathing slowly steadied, and his body grew warmer, as if life was returning to it. Seeing this, she gazed at him lovingly, unable to look away. Then she continued her song, "Until the day the waves disappear forever, even if I am the only one who recognizes you, even if I don't look back, even if I can't turn back, my tears will not fall." Melusine placed a hand on her chest and thought, "How strange. I thought I'd never once resented Kieran. The more I sang, the more I hated and missed him. Besides, Kieran wouldn't remember me anyway." Then she stood up to leave, but as if sensing her departure, his body stirred in response. Melusine hesitated, reluctant to go. She thought, "It's all right, this is enough. Just seeing you is enough for me, Kieran." Suddenly, a voice from behind made her emotions well up, a faint, weak whisper calling out, "Cat!" Kieran had woken up, grabbing her arm tightly before she could leave. He asked, his voice choked with emotion, "Melusine?" Her expression was a mixture of shock, a hint of joy, and fear that Kieran still remembered her. With a look of astonishment on her face, she called out his name, "Kieran." She leaned down over him and asked, "You still remember me?" Kieran raised his hand, his eyes filled with longing, and smiled as he caressed her cheek, replying, "I remember everything. I remember everything about you." Choked with happiness, she cried out his name, "Kieran," and threw herself into his arms after so many years of longing. As Kieran held her tightly, he closed his eyes, savoring her warmth and committing this moment to memory. He called her name Melusine. Then, as if he'd made up his mind, he removed the necklace from her neck and spoke. "All right now. You should go back to where you belong." Though he couldn't bear it, Kieran forced himself to say it. Panicked and shocked, as if she couldn't believe her own ears, Melusine asked, "What are you saying? But why? Are you sending me away?" His face fell as he said with resolve, "Your home is the sea. Mermaids aren't human to begin with, and I was just being stubborn, trying to keep a woman who was born of and belongs to the sea. I wanted to hold on to you too badly, rather than watch you suffer by staying with me." She called out his name, Kieran, then stepped forward and cupped his gaunt face, saying, "Look at me. I have something to tell you about what happened after I left Chitin. Every single day, from the moment I opened my eyes, thoughts of you would crash over me like waves, and I tried so hard to push them away. But I don't have to do that anymore, Kieran," Melusine said through her tears, which were now falling freely. She pressed her forehead against his, confessing through her sobs, "I missed you so much." Her amber eyes shimmered with tears. Kieran looked at her, his eyes overflowing with love. Then they shared a kiss, bridging the years of their separation, and Kieran kissed her back with passion. After a moment, they parted and smiled at each other in bliss. He then said softly, "Melusine, it's okay if you run away again. Whether it's the sea or the land, wherever you want to go is fine. I'll find a way to get to you no matter what." Melusine gently hugged his arm and replied, "Kieran." She recalled all the happy times they had shared in the past. She would often hug Kieran and ask, "Do you love me?" But as they were lost in their tender moment, he said, "Melusine," and a pair of small feet slowly approached them. The little girl, Lao, stared at the two adults before her. As Kieran started to say, "I," the girl hurried closer, calling out anxiously, "Mommy!" Then she pointed fearfully at the man, trembling as she yelled, "A fish! It's a shark! Mommy, why are you with that shark guy?" Seeing Lao seemed to double his happiness. He smiled fondly at the little girl, thinking to himself in wonder, "I've dreamed of this. A child who looks exactly like her." He turned to her and said, "Melusine, our child looks so much like you. I thought she was just an illusion." But then Melusine smiled and replied, "Not at all. She's the spitting image of you." Seeing this, Lao frantically asked her mother. Mom, you know that shark's name? Melusine looked up and gazed gently at the little girl. Say it, repeat after me. Daddy. Kieran, sitting beside them, watched the little girl expectantly, then he suddenly lifted Lao high into the air, to the little girl's surprise. Reacting instinctively, she clung tightly to him, and Kieran said lovingly, I am your daddy. Lao gradually got used to it, her childish voice calling out, Daddy. Kieran, bursting with joy, responded to Lao, and Lao explained, Your name means to shine. As the family happily gathered, Kieran cheerfully replied, Then you must become someone who truly shines, Lao. Ian. At a villa, perched on a cliff by the sea, Ian and everyone in the castle rushed out in a worried flurry when they heard Kieran had returned. His Grace, the Grand Duke has returned, Ian and the butler said, choked up and on the verge of tears. Your Grace, where on earth have you been all this time? Kieran walked in with a bright expression, her cloak draped over his shoulder. He complained through his tears. It's been 3 months. Even though I sent out search parties, I had no idea. If you were dead or alive, do you have any idea how worried everyone in the household was? The small figure of Lao peeked out from behind him, her childish voice calling, Daddy. Seeing this, Ian jumped back in astonishment. The little girl put on a timid act, saying with a worried look, I'm scared of that person. Everyone was immediately captivated by her cuteness. Kieran, playing the part of a doting father, seriously told her, If you want, I'll make sure you never have to see that person again. The butler asked, puzzled, Could that child possibly be your Grace's daughter? Kieran, holding Lao in his arms, happily boasted, That's right. And Ian worriedly wondered, He disappeared 3 months ago, so how could he possibly have a child this old? Wait a minute, if that's the case, could it be? Just then, Melusine calmly entered through the doorway and called out to Kieran. He said in astonishment, This woman is she the one His Grace the Grand Duke was searching so desperately for? Ian breathed a sigh of relief, feeling a bit happy for him. Really? He finally achieved what he longed for. Then, Kieran turned to the servants and commanded seriously, Everyone, listen carefully. The guest who has come with me is the future Grand Duchess, so you must all serve her well. All the servants glanced at each other, smiling with delight, because their master was finally happy. The staff replied in unison, Yes, we will serve her with our utmost devotion. Lao joyfully bounced on the large bed. It's so soft, so soft! Melusine, sitting beside her, smiled and asked, Do you like it here? The little girl answered cheerfully, Yes, even though I wasn't too fond of that man from earlier. The one I saw at first. I love all the other people. Everyone gathered around, complimenting how adorable she was. She covered her mouth and chuckled. Is that so? Just then, someone entered to announce, Your Grace, the Grand Duchess. The Grand Duke has instructed me to prepare the princess's bedroom across from this one. Melusine replied, Thank you. Oh, but there is something I'd like to ask. Do you know if a maid named Anne is here? Just then, he walked in and answered, That maid is on her way, seeing Kieran. Lao shouted with joy, Daddy! Melusine happily approached him, eagerly asking for confirmation. Really? Is that true? Is Anne really coming here? He replied. Yes. Overjoyed, she threw herself into Kieran's arms. Thank you, Kieran. He smiled at her dotingly and said, If you wanted, we could have stayed on that island longer. Glau is still too young to be away from the sea for too long, she explained. No, I want Glau to see this view, the magnificent sight of the beautiful sun in the sky. Just as I dreamed under the moonlight long ago, this is the place where I fell for a siren and where we welcomed this child. Kieran looked down at her and said, Melusine, if Glau is all right, there is a place we can go together. Melusine asked curiously, Where are we going together? By the surging sea, their family stood happily together as he continued, What I've prepared for you, all this time, our paradise. It is a small house by the seashore. It was not too extravagant, just the cozy atmosphere of a family on a beautiful island. After a day of rest on the island, Melusine stepped outside in amazement, constantly exclaiming with delight. She looked at everything in the house, a maid holding Glau behind her. Following her, Kieran added, It is probably closer to the sea here than in Triton. The maid explained, His Grace, the Grand Duke, prepared this place 3 years ago. On the closest island to Versace, he wanted to create a space for your Grace. Hearing this, Melusine was deeply moved and replied, I see. Then she turned to the maid, Anne, thank you for coming here with us, and cheerfully replied, Not at all, your Grace. On the contrary, I feel truly honored to be able to live beside you two. Kieran came up from behind, hugged her, and called out, Kitten, he asked with concern. Are you all right? Confused, she asked. Me? Kieran said a bit bashfully. You have not been on a boat in a long time, so you must be tired, right? She smiled and replied, I am fine, taking the hint, and carried Glau outside, saying, Let us go play in the garden. Suddenly, Melusine lit up and said, "Oh, there is something I want to do with you." Kieran tilted his head, asking, "What is it you want to do with me?" As the sun began to set, they walked happily along the beach, holding each other intimately. Kieran held her slender, soft hand tightly as Melusine's graceful body swayed. Against his in a dance, they danced together happily until the sun slowly set over the sea. Perhaps because she was a mermaid, she struggled a bit with dancing. Seeing this, Kieran quickly adjusted, gently guiding her. "Melusine, it is better if you look at me before you fall," Melusine said helplessly as her feet stumbled. "This is harder than I thought." She carelessly stepped on her skirt, her body wobbling as if she were about to fall. Melusine cried out in panic, clutching tightly onto Kieran. He swiftly wrapped an arm around her waist, pulling her securely against him. Melusine threw her arms around Kieran's neck, her eyes sparkling as she looked at him, and then she burst out laughing. That made him flustered. "Why are you laughing?" Melusine leaned against him playfully and replied, "I am so happy I get to dance with you like this. Actually, a long time ago, when I went to a ball, everyone there was dancing, looking so happy and radiant in their party outfits, wearing masks and dancing together, and that's why I wanted to dance with you, Kieran." Kieran silently gazed at the woman in his arms. He called out to Melusine, then slowly knelt down, much to her surprise. He gently took her hands and lightly kissed the back of them. "Now that I have you, I get to hold your hands. You can hold them as much as you like, whenever you want." Melusine, a little emotional, spoke with tears welling in her eyes. "So, does that mean I'm yours now, Kieran?" Without a moment's hesitation, Kieran quickly confirmed, "That's right. That's why you can do whatever you want. Even if you go out to the far-off sea and never return, I'll be right here waiting for you." She asked, her voice thick with emotion. "What if I can never come back?" Kieran replied seriously. Even then, nothing would change. Overcome with emotion, Melusine called his name. "Kieran, do you understand what that means?" The sun rises and sets over and over. The waves crash and the water flows everywhere. I think that's so wonderful. It might seem like those things are changing, but they really aren't. Even if we have to be apart for a while, we'll always come back to each other. I'm just like that vast ocean out there. Kieran's heart stirred as he listened. He suddenly pulled out a small box, saying, I got something for you." She gasped in astonishment. "Kieran!" He slowly slid the ring onto her finger. Melusine asked, "What is this?" Kieran slowly began to explain. "This ring is meant to be my shackles, not yours, my kitten," he confessed with all his heart, still on one knee. "Melusine, will you marry me?" Just like that, a proposal was made in the spacious room. Then, a familiar voice rang out. "My lady, you look absolutely stunning." Hearing her compliment, Melusine was so happy that her face flushed slightly. "Really?" she asked. Just then, Anne, who was holding Glau, asked the little girl, "What do you think, princess?" Glau beamed with a delighted smile. "Mommy's so pretty." Melusine glanced over at them and broke into a very gentle smile. Seeing that look on her face, Kieran, who was standing not far away, suddenly frowned. He quickly walked over to her and turned to the designer. "Melusine, you seem a bit tired. Why don't we call it a day?" The designer's eyes widened in surprise. "But my lady still has one more dress to try on." Hearing this, Kieran became slightly irritated and said in a low voice, "We'll do the rest tomorrow." Naturally, the designer couldn't argue with his words, so he simply nodded in agreement. "Yes, I understand." After the designer and the maids had all departed, he slowly walked over to Melusine and suggested, "How about we go out for a little fresh air?" She seemed thrilled. "Can we?" Kieran quickly added, "I have a place I want to take you." Before long, the two of them found themselves in a lively little town. People were bustling about, buying and selling. A wave of nostalgia suddenly washed over Melusine. "So this is the place. It's still just like it was before." Kieran walked cautiously behind her, reminding her worriedly, "It's very crowded here, so please be careful." Melusine looked directly into his eyes and obediently. "Yes," she replied, just as she saw something. A figure in a black cloak, just like hers, was slowly disappearing down a small alley. Melusine quickly broke free from Kieran's embrace to chase after that woman. "Kieran, wait for me a second." He looked at her in surprise, unable to understand what was happening right in front of him. A few minutes later, Melusine caught up to the woman. "Wait, are you the person I met that time?" It turned out she was also a mermaid. Like Melusine, she slowly lifted her head and spoke. "I knew you would return, little sister." Just then, Kieran also managed to catch up to them. "Melusine, where did you go?" Melusine clasped her hands together and replied calmly, "I'm fine, Kieran. There's just something I wanted to ask." Seeing Kieran appear, the other woman spoke out, her voice a mixture of confusion and admiration. "That man isn't dead? So he really has become a true siren, I see?" Hearing this, Melusine asked in confusion, "A true siren?" The mermaid began to explain it to her more clearly. "Not all of the men who spend the night with one of us become a true siren, meaning they survive to come back. This is the very first time it's happened. At that moment, embarrassment was written all over her face. I don't understand what you mean. Can you please explain? The woman then posed a question to her. Do you know what the meaning of siren is? Melusine thought for a moment, then gently nodded in response. Of course, it means the keeper of the waves. The mysterious woman continued to clasp her hands together and then pointed toward Kieran, and said, but what does it truly mean to be a keeper? To remain uneroded even as the waves crash, an unchanging heart, what is that? You should seek the answer from the man standing behind you. As the woman's finger pointed at Kieran, Melusine's eyes unconsciously fixated on him. Kieran didn't want her to stay here any longer, and quickly tried to pull Melusine away. That's enough, let's go. She had no other choice but to obey him. Okay. At that moment, the woman once again said something that was thought-provoking. Congratulations on having your wish granted. Someday, I will definitely, again. Now, in another scene, the view outside the royal palace was incredibly magnificent and splendid. Beautiful blue butterflies were endlessly filling the sky. The maid, Anne, called out worriedly, Princess! Hearing her call, the little girl, Lau, quickly rose from a lush green bush, happily playing with the flowers and the blue butterflies fluttering around her, and looked at the somewhat familiar scene, and in her mind, an image from long ago suddenly surfaced. Could it be that a situation just like this happened before? With that thought, she rushed over to warn the little girl. You shouldn't wander off on your own here, Princess. Anne's words confused little Lau, but why? She patiently explained to the family's little princess, well, it's because this is the royal palace. If His Grace the Duke and Her Grace the Grand Duchess wish to marry, they need the permission of His Majesty the Emperor. That is why we are here. The sound of footsteps echoed continuously in their direction, causing both Anne and Lau to look up. A bossy voice rang out, Hey you, what's your name? This attitude from the boy in front of her left Lau a bit at a loss for how to respond. Me? My dad says that anyone who asks for a name has to give their own first. Not only did he fail to get her name, but he got a lecture instead. The boy with shimmering blonde hair gritted his teeth in anger. What? You? How dare you? Despite the boy's anger, Lau remained completely calm, showing not a single trace of fear. The boy's face turned as red as a tomato as he said, But I'll forgive you this time. My name is Jason. The moment the boy stated his name, the maid, and instantly realized the noble status of the person standing before them. My lady, you must bow your head quickly. Unaware of the situation, young Lau turned and asked her, Who is that? The maid, Anne, hastily explained to her, That is His Highness, the Crown Prince. Seeing the two of them facing off like this, Anne's head began to spin. Good heavens, what an unexpected encounter on our very first day in the capital. Kieran's fiancée, the daughter of Marquis Hesno, was standing face to face with him in a rather unpleasant situation. Facing this woman, strange and indescribable feelings suddenly swelled within Melusine's heart. She thought to herself, Estelle, then softly spoke the name of the maid standing right in front of her. Estelle, but before the word was fully out, she froze and fell silent. Estelle slowly lowered her head in a deep bow to Melusine, as was proper etiquette. Meanwhile, thoughts of the past swirled in her head. She doesn't remember me anymore. To be honest, I wanted to ask Estelle back then why she hated me so much. She wanted to kill me. But now that she has amnesia, I suppose that's impossible now. And so, she turned to look at the man behind her. Kieran, let's go. Saying that, she took his arm and they walked away together. If so, this bond between us should end right here. The moment Melusine turned to leave, Estelle's eyes filled with a strange curiosity. So that's the Grand Duchess. Did I once dream of becoming the Grand Duchess just for a moment like this? As if sensing the eyes on her back, Melusine instantly turned to look behind her. In the moment their eyes met, only one of them felt a flutter as her heart skipped a beat, while the other coldly looked away as if nothing happened at all. Estelle lowered her gaze, pressing her lips together. That's right, this is enough. I even feel a sense of relief. After being sold to a slave trader in the Duchy of Baton, I was saved by His Highness Edward and came to the imperial palace as a maid. I tried so hard to forget my past. Now I can finally accept it. Any lingering attachments must end here. While Estelle was lost in her jumbled thoughts, another maid called her name. Luna, yeah, let's go. The head housekeeper is looking for you. She gave a smug smile and began to stride. After her friend in this royal palace. Yeah, let's go. A small hand suddenly reached out, holding a small bouquet of white daisies. Here, take it. It's a gift because they're fair like you. What do you think? They're fragrant and pretty, aren't they? Lau abruptly turned her head away, and only after a moment did she reply, Jason, I hate flowers. Hearing her firm words, Jason looked a little disappointed. What? Wait, then how about this? He held out a ring. As soon as she saw the ring in the boy's palm, Anne asked in astonishment, Your Highness, what is this? Jason pouted and replied, It's my mother's, but it's pretty, so I wanted to give it to Lau. But another voice suddenly cut in, That won't do. Upon seeing the newcomer, the boy cried out in surprise. Ah, father! He tilted his head slightly to explain. Because that is something I gave to the Empress, Jason. If you didn't earn it yourself, it isn't yours. Return the ring to the Empress now. Next time, only use something you've earned yourself. Faced with his father's gentle lesson, although Jason was reluctant, he still obediently replied, Yes, father. A chamberlain standing not far away spoke up to remind him, Your Majesty, the Grand Duke is waiting. Hearing his voice, he immediately stood up, not forgetting to tell his young son, I have to go now. All right, Jason, you should head back to your palace too. After Emperor Edward left, the young boy looked over at Lao. With an extremely flustered look, Jason softly called her name. Lao, what do you like? I'll bring that to you next time. Hearing the boy's question, Lao quickly broke into a joyful smile and said what was truly on her mind. Fish. Jason scratched his head and smiled at her. A short while later, in a drawing room of the royal palace, Kieran entered and greeted, Your Majesty. Edward quickly walked over to the sofa and sat down across from him, asking, By the way, are the wedding preparations going smoothly? Kieran quickly replied, Everything is going well, thank you for your concern. Then Edward raised a hand to his mouth and coughed softly a few times. Actually, approving the marriage was just a formality. The reason I called you here today, Uncle, is... He paused for a moment before saying, To apologize to you. He was a little confused by his unexpected words. What are you apologizing for? But Edward seemed to have some difficulty bringing it up. It's about what happened before. When you were searching for a certain woman, Uncle, I behaved terribly. I shouldn't have, and it was my fault. Remembering this, Kieran's heart seemed to ache at first, but then he spoke calmly. That is all in the past. There's no need for you to apologize. Instead, it would be better for you to forgive yourself. Seeing this gracious side of him, a kind smile suddenly appeared on Edward's lips. From the bottom of my heart, I have always admired your attitude, your calm demeanor, Uncle. I haven't been able to stop thinking about the words you said that day. Images from that memory began to flood his mind, along with Kieran's thoughtful advice. Edward, stop living in the past. It's funny, only after Jason was born could I truly look at myself and see how much I was lacking, and how I tried to compensate for it in such twisted ways. At the very least, I don't want to make this child as warped as I was. Is it possible to fix everything? Kieran gave him a calm smile. Absolutely. Hearing those words, all of Edward's negative thoughts seemed to vanish. He suddenly stood up. All right, my business here is done. I'll be taking my leave now. I sincerely congratulate you on your wedding. You've also changed so much from before. It feels like I'm returning to a time when everything was still peaceful. Not long after, the wedding of Grand Duke Kieran and the mermaid Melusine was held. Under the hazy sunset and the rhythm of the lapping waves, Kieran spoke his vows. I swear by the waves that never break, by the sea that will never run dry, and by your eyes, which will own and bind me forever. From this day forward, I, Kieran von Penhart, belong to you, Melusine, until the day I die. Melusine looked at him and smiled happily. And I to you, forever and always. The moment Kieran swept his bride into his arms, the two children, Lao and Jason, had to shyly cover their eyes. Their happiness was now sealed with a perfectly blissful wedding. At this moment, Melusine could press her face close to the man she loved and declare, My siren, the beginning and the end of a mermaid, forever and always. To the man who was like the sea, whom she could return to time and time again, she lovingly uttered the most sincere words, Kieran, I don't think I'll ever forget today. Kieran happily nodded and replied to her, That's right, this is a day I will cherish forever. That night, in their wedding chamber, when he opened his eyes, Kieran couldn't find the one he loved. He sat up softly and called, Melusine. I had a dream about the moment I threw myself into the sea during a storm, searching for Melusine. And then my heart felt like it was being torn apart, and then I heard it, and I was running out of air, and then I heard, like the waves that never stay in one place, like the wind that never brushes past just one spot, only my song remained. On a beautiful and windy beach, Melusine was sitting and talking with her little daughter, Lao. No matter where your heart is, so don't cry, don't be in pain anymore. A sound I would never forget, the song of the woman I love. Suddenly hearing footsteps approaching her, little Lao slowly turned around and recognized the man standing nearby. Oh, it's father! The first peaceful moment of my life. My sea, my everything. I see it now. After so many years of wandering, I have finally found happiness. A few hundred years later, at the Boxeous Sea, on the surface of a fiercely churning and tense sea, a scholarly-looking young man held a pair of binoculars and observed his surroundings. A man with sharp features suddenly appeared and a sudden tense presence behind him made the night jump. Ah, Your Highness, you have to wear earplugs when you're out on deck. There are mermaids in boxes. Taking his advice, the man nodded and held out his hand. Yes, that's exactly why I'm here. Give me a pair. The helpless knight could only obey, and as he slowly put in his earplugs, he let out a frustrated sigh. It's such a pain having to do this every time we pass boxes. Isn't it just a legend? Not long ago, when people still believed in such legends, the entire empire knew the love story between the former Grand Duke and a mermaid. Thinking about this story, the first thought that popped into his head was that only kids believe in that kind of stuff anymore. What man would actually risk his life for a woman? It's so absurd and irresponsible. But before he could dwell on the thought, a strange singing voice suddenly echoed from the open sea. Is that singing? The man thought to himself, confused. But I'm wearing earplugs, how is this possible? The singing only lasted for a few short minutes, but the sea's surface grew increasingly, more turbulent and violent, causing his ship to shatter and sink beneath the water. As he was drifting in the middle of the ocean, he reached out, thinking, I have to get to the surface somehow. I have to swim. I don't know why my heart is so full of sorrow. A story from long, long ago still lingers in this tear-filled heart. This is a story of endless pain and love, and as long as the memory of that love exists, this story will live on forever. It cannot be washed away by tears, nor can it be severed by death. It is the story of the beautiful Melusine and the man who embraced her ocean waves. Thank you for watching today's video. And with that, we've reached the end of this captivating series. See you all in the next video. We'll have more dramatic and exciting series coming up. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe to the channel to support us, and so you won't miss any new videos. Thank you so much for watching, and have a wonderful day.